Welcome back to another week of Can I Be Honest? Tonight we are going to be talking about the N-word, both locally in our backyard in Michigan, in Leelanau County, as well as on the BBC, aired publicly. We are also going to be talking about a couple gentlemen that received life sentences. One is about to walk. One is still looking at life for very minor offenses. Dewan, how are you feeling this week?
I am glad to be here. Glad to be able to weigh in, give my thoughts on the subject matters. Really excited to hear from some of our viewers and our listeners to hear what they have to say about it. Hope that we get a wide range of perspectives on these subject matters, because I think that, at least the N-word seems like it's pretty complex. The way that it's being used in these two different scenarios. But this sentencing piece, I'm definitely interested to hear what people's thoughts are regarding that and dive into it. I mean, obviously, we have no shortage of subject matters to discuss when it comes to race in this country. Ralph, tell them why.
This is America.
I have a dream.
These are animals.
America preaches integration and practices segregation.
Why did you say Mexico?
A rising tide of discontent.
The South will rise again. I have a dream.
We have contrasting visions about what America is.
This is America.
This is America.
So we got Tom Eckerly. We're going to start with him in Leelanau County. If you're joining us on Facebook or YouTube, welcome. We appreciate you being here. This is a show. The whole purpose of the show really is to bring people together so that we can hear each other, hear different perspectives, and actually listen and try to understand where someone else is coming from. Try to think from their perspective and appreciate where they're coming from, even if we disagree. I think part of the problem that we have in this country is that we're really just waiting to take some shots. And the only reason I actually listen to your words is so I can understand how to get at you better, rather than to be like, understand like, okay, so you think this because of this, or here's kind of how this works. Have you thought about this? And then also being prepared to listen as well. So that's part of what we try to do, part of what we try to model on this. We want people's different opinions. So please share this with people that you think would be not just interested, but people that might have a different perspective, people that might be rubbed the wrong way by some of our ideas, some of your ideas, etc., or just people that are interested at all. So there's also a number below that we'll share that you can always text us and get on the show and share your opinion. So Dewan, Tom Eckerly, Leelanau County, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I have.
What happened?
So he used the N-word. He is a road commissioner. He works on that board, a governing body in Leelanau County. And he, used the N-word, and I think what he talked about was, being interviewed, having, somebody bring Black Lives Matter into the conversation is kind of what sent him off, right? And initially, people were challenging him, telling him they thought he should step down. And, he was doubling down and saying, look, I say whatever I want to say, and like weirdly for me, like, or not weird to me, but I actually appreciate people that will say what they mean and then double down and say, hey, like, this is the way I felt. I'm not saying that he should hold his position. That's up to the people, in my opinion, in Leelanau County. I think that'll be very telling on them, being proud to be represented by somebody that takes those positions and is willing to use that term. So, is it time for him to go? I mean, obviously he stepped down. And I think that is one of the things that I really appreciate about this space right now and this time that we live in, is that there is a power, so to speak, that we possess, those of us that are about like getting this right and not punting the ball and moving this issue on to the next generation so that they would, have to start over from scratch and have to take it on. But those of us that are ready, willing to engage and see what we can do to make things better, right? But I also I think that we should use that power wisely. I think that
with great power, that's what came to mind. With great power comes great responsibility, which you were saying, because there is a lot of you can do. How power is wielded is extremely important.
Exactly. So, I think that we need to spend some time becoming accustomed to this power that we have. Right? I think that, not to get too sci-fi on you, but when you see a superhero start to understand and get exposed to the power that they possess, there's oftentimes some training that takes place. Right. And I think that we've been able to identify this power and use it. And I just want to see us maximize the potential of it. I want to see us use it wisely, and where it's supposed to be applied, where the pressure should be applied, let's apply it there. And not apply the wrong type of pressure for the wrong type of scenario. We're going to talk about sentencing in a little bit, right? And I think that the same thing can apply to us as we yield this power, right? I think sometimes we can give maximum penalties for a minimum offense, right? So I think that, the irony of the subject matters that we're going to talk about is I think that on one hand, we find ourselves the judge, and the jury, and the other hand, we identify with the one that's being sentenced. Right. So I think that we need to make sure that when we sitting in that seat of judge and jury, that we're given an appropriate sentence, is all I'm saying. So, Tom Eckerly, I say peace to you.
he said, I'm not racist. He said it's Black Lives Matter that are racist. What do you think he meant by that?
I mean, come on, man. I think part of you'll hear me overuse the word power. I'm just kind of obsessed with that word right now. But I think that if you talk about this subject matter, if you're talking about the subject matter of race, I think that it is a space where Black people, by and large, get a huge education on it. Naturally, organically, it's built into the things that we have to learn, we have to be hyper-focused on, and we need to understand how to navigate in this space at a high level or as best we can. So there's things that we pass on and we teach each other. Just like, we send our kids to school to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? So I think when you put somebody like him in a space and where you can identify with him, when you can seize the opportunity and let him take all the heat, and you find yourselves maybe aligning with someone like Tom in certain spaces, take advantage of that moment and see what you can learn without you having to be the one to be punished, is what I would suggest to any of us. But he don't see himself as a racist. Black Lives Matter are the racists. I think a big part of it is not understanding or wanting to see how to seize power, see how to flip the script and say, you know what, I'll do to them what I see them doing to other people, right? But it backfired. I mean, he took it too far. But I think he really took it to where it lies and sits within itself. So, I mean, we always see here, it's not a new fighting technique to say, you know what, you're a racist, or this is reverse racism. Those terms are terms that we're really familiar with. And at the end of the day, it's I don't know. I mean, I don't have a lot of energy to give to that. He exposed himself in a way that I think, many people know better and a lot more careful and more sophisticated to expose themselves in that way. But I think that, he put himself in a corner and he had to do whatever he could to maneuver. And I'm not saying that he don't even believe that. He might very well believe that. I don't know, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm I am, it's interesting. Like that particular part is intriguing to me. I mean, he comes out, says what he says, doubles down on it, and I don't know what he expects to happen. I think that's the most natural thing to happen is that he's going to be forced to resign. I think we're just at a place where people aren't going to tolerate something like that from a public official, and even businesses. When you see businesses aligning a certain way, you'll have large movements to shut the businesses down. I think there is I think we're just misunderstanding each other in a lot. I don't think we're seeking to understand each other in a lot of ways. I think for him to be able to say that there's probably people in Black Lives Matter that will use whatever power they have in certain ways that will go against someone like Tom for just because he's white. Maybe. I don't know. But his perspective on what the movement is and on the backdrop of and the context of what's happening in America and the necessity for it, I think is where the real conversation needs to be had more. And I think we need to be seeking to draw bridges and to really connect with people on the level like intellectually and emotionally, psychologically, like all these kind of things on every level to be able to allow each side to be heard and say, what do we value here in this country? Like, what do we say that we're about? Like, as far as what do you want? What do you say that you want? Not just for your family, but for families. What should an American family be afforded here now in 2020? And are we working to address that for everybody so everybody can access that? And I think, I think the more that we understand each other and get down to the basics, I think the better off we'll be. Right now, I don't think most of us want to listen or hear. And so it's easy to just kind of say, they're this, they're that. You label them, you put them over here. You then define everything that you see through these colored set of lenses that you've developed over time, and that the people around you in your little silo, in your bunker, will continue to affirm. And I think, it's just, I think it's tough to find a way forward for him. So I'm not surprised to some degree. Like I have been, it's been sobering to see the amount of this stuff, like this really egregious, very flagrant stuff just out in the open, and people publicly saying, well, there's the N-word, whether it's like very far end white supremacist statements, slogans, banners flying. It is sobering. That's what I'll say. So yeah, man.
Yep.
And we got another one. So the BBC, it aired the N-word, and I don't know if we have a clip of that or not, or if we should just describe it. So
yeah, we do have a clip of it. Ralph, okay. Can you cue up the clip of with the woman that said the word, used the term?
The angle of the car that had been driven deliberately at him. Just to warn you, you're about to hear highly offensive language, because as the men ran away, they hurled racial abuse, calling him a nigger. To me, this is huge. This is a horrible crime.
So the BBC is getting raked over the coals for this one. And then there's one of their employees actually is quitting. I know we have that video too. Can we play that and see his statement? It's a short statement.
I've thought long and hard about what I'm about to say and what it means, and on this occasion I just don't think that I can look the other way. We live in a world that needs to change, systems that need to change, organizations that need to change. And as a person that believes that change can happen and wanting change to happen, I understand transition. I understand it's not something that's going to happen overnight, that there will need to be a lot of learning and unlearning and tearing down of certain building blocks of our society that took a long time to build up. So I'm okay with process. I'm okay with waiting within reason for certain things to change. But the BBC sanctioning the N-word being said on national television by a white person is something that I can't rock with. This is an error in judgment where I can't just smile with you through the process and act like everything is okay. I'm happy working with organizations until we all get it right. But this feels like more than getting it wrong. The action and the defense of the action feels like a slap in the face of our community. That's why, effective immediately, I'm leaving my job as a radio broadcaster for BBC One Extra. With no apology, I just don't feel comfortable being aligned with the organization. I've loved my time there. I've got to work with some amazing people and made some lifelong friends and had great opportunities. But money and opportunity doesn't outweigh the dissatisfaction that I feel with this situation. This is wild to me, especially in the current social climate, and I can't make any sense of it no matter how much I think about it. So I think it's time that I left.
All right. You want to go first?
So yeah, I'll chime in. There's a bunch of different things for me. One, like, I wasn't tripping on her running the show or her like doing like quoting something. I mean, I think it makes sense to, like, everybody understands what you're saying if you say the N word, right? I think that is showing a level of respect that oftentimes we want to make sure is understood. Like, that's the proper approach, right? Now, I'm like, personally, now I'll make sure I say that I only speak for me, right? I'm not tripping if somebody's quoting somebody else in that way and she's putting it in its proper context. She is definitely, like, making sure that the people she communicates that it's horrible and it's not acceptable and it's inappropriate, right? And then she used the term. Now, I was looking for there to be a lot more. Like, I'm still, like, wouldn't be surprised if there's something else that we must be missing. Now, on the flip side of that, like, what I appreciate about my like the brother that was on is that he's, like, ready to sacrifice and give up something to take a stance for, like, what he believes. And I think, you know, when you and I talked about this earlier, one of the things I said was that when I hear him saying, you know, he can't just, like, let this ride and smile and keep it moving, basically, that makes me think that there's something else that he's been exposed to, that he's had to deal with, climate and culture. Like, I have nothing other to go off of to, like, make that assumption other than what he said and my own lived experience and me seeing people do just what he described, smile, play some stuff off and let stuff ride. So he's more in the midst of the culture and what's happening in there. But him calling himself to action and saying, this is a decision that I'm going to make based on the way, like, I receive that or I feel about that. Like, I'm like, yo, like, you know, kudos to him. I appreciate, I respect that. And
but part of the action is not him leaving. The action is him calling out the network. I mean, because you can leave, you could just leave and, like, I'm quit here. I'm going to sign this. Like, I'm done. Peace.
Yeah, but I mean,
when you go on,
no separation. There's no separation, right? Like the I'm talking about the sacrifice, like, right. So, like, the action is one thing, but I'm talking about willing to part with something, right? It's like, that's what I respect, right? If you call somebody out, right? Because, I mean, you see people call people out and they still want to be in that relationship and still not be ready to part with, like, what they have, you know what I mean? Or what they have to gain from that. But him willing to sacrifice and part ways with and put that on the line, like, I just respect that, because I don't see a whole lot of that. I see people, like, from behind, like, keyboards and whatnot, taking stabs and pokes at people where there's not a lot, like, on the line. He said, I'll pull the plug, I'll sever ties. I appreciate the relationships that I've been able to get. I appreciate the opportunities that I've had access to. But because you did this, I'm going to take a really hard stand. And I just respect that. Now, again, he knows a lot more is going on at BBC. I have, like, not less than a little amount of understanding about BBC, their practices as an organization. So those are, like, the thoughts that I have on it. But I will say this again: if that's all they did, and we are looking to cancel based on that, I think that we have to be careful that we are like using really, really harsh sentences. And it's not the same thing, in my opinion, as what Tom did up in what's it called? Leelanau County. Yeah. So those are my thoughts. Where you at with it?
Yeah, very similar. I don't. She quotes somebody. She couches it and says contextually that, you know, like, look, this is a problematic term. Here's what they use. Here's what they said. People do that kind of stuff all the time. If you want to say that this problem, we shouldn't do that. I get that. I think she put enough around it to, like, say, like, look, we respect this. We recognize how egregious this is, like, just in the way that she set it up. I think what's weird to me, and I listened to him again in this because I heard it yesterday. He talked about a situation, like, singular. He didn't, like, there was nothing that I heard, and there might be something, but there's nothing that I heard in what he said that led me to think anything else had happened to him or, like, around him or whatever. Like, he doesn't reference anything, so it's hard to get that. But, like, even in the language that he used, talking about it, both that, like, he had so many positive things to say and really, like, talked about this situation in this context and them being tone deaf for saying that. I'm like, man, like, this is a great opportunity for you to, like, really help. You know what I'm saying? Because if you make a mistake like this, and if the world is kind of looking at you like as this is a major mistake, like, you could actually be a voice of, like, okay, let me help in this space. And instead, you, like, I actually wonder for me, because I see this is a time for this, and you see a lot of people do this. To me, it's kind of like, is this an opportunity for him to, like, capitalize on a situation and grab clout and get his name out there? And, like, I'm not going to stand for this. That's just that's one of the questions that I have. So, yeah, Stephen Marshall said these instances are far from similar. Byron says it's commendable that he quit. You know,
Brian Ferguson Day said, "Peace. What up, though? What up, though?" Yeah. I mean,
somebody's angry.
Somebody's angry.
I see the angry. I see the little angry emojis floating up.
All right. Well, I mean, I can't read your emoji, so you gotta use some comments or jump on here and share what you're angry about. Like I might misinterpret your
yeah. So if you want to get on the show, you can text the number that's scrolling below, and we will send you a link. You can get on here, jump on here with your comments, and yeah, we'd love to hear anger, apathy, everything.
Yeah, bring it. Unless you're scared to share your feelings live and you just can type your comments and be safe like most people do. But if you live enough to be honest, you know, text 313-473-0499 and we'll get you on the show. But yeah, I mean, I just think we need to, like, use tough sentencing guidelines and yield the power that we possess in this space, like, wisely when it's appropriate. And when it's not, you know, I think you need to take advantage and seize the opportunity for it to be a teachable moment, right? And again, like, that's me saying this from here. And if you are within an organization and you don't feel compelled to do that, like, that's one of the things I've been saying to people a lot lately is, like, when we're on a team and you do have some diversity there, where you at then, B? Like, he talking about we ain't scared. Where you at there? Jump on. But yeah, I think that one of the things that we bring to the table when you have diversity, it's not on the job description, right? So, like, we're able to bring and speak into those blind spots in a way that a lot of organizations need it, but that's not on the job description and it's not a requirement, right? So, like, and it's weighty and it's heavy, right? And a lot of times you feel like if you're too honest, people ain't ready to receive it. They're not able to hear it, and they can make your situation, like, uncomfortable for you because you made it uncomfortable for them. And when people do that, they start using real serious chess moves, right? To see if they can stomp your voice out or whatever, right? So I understand there's a lot at play there. There's a lot of dynamics that go on there. So when we encourage you to do that, we're not taking it lightly, right? We understand what's being asked, but you know, that everybody's not going to take up that mantle, and I get it. You know, I tend to live in that space personally, but it's a decision that I've made, right? And I told somebody earlier, like, I embrace the fact that I will probably never be comfortable in this place that we call like America, right? So I just embrace that, press into that. And I'm okay with that because I work to try to make it better, right? But what I've learned to do is make everybody feel some of that discomfort, right? So in the spaces I'm in, I spread some of that discomfort around and make, you know, the white folk feel the same thing that, or something similar to what I feel, right? So that we can understand that, like, that there is tension in the air. Let's work towards solutions, right? If you don't act like there's no problem, nobody's putting in work to solve it. So let's, you know, deal with the fact that there's some problems and let's figure out what the solutions are. All right. Yeah. What's Stephen Marshall saying?
You're gonna flash that up. It's a personal decision to quit, but I agree that if this is the only issue, then it's like using a jackhammer to a brad nail. Yeah, I agree with that. I would actually love to hear what Paul thinks about this. I should have thought to like call him because part of what we're talking about here is like the way that I most understand race is from an American vantage point. You know what I'm saying? And other countries are just different. When you go to Jamaica, like the racial dynamics are very, very, very different. When you know in England and other parts of the world, they're different, and different things have different meanings. And so that's you know, from us trying to assess what's going on here, there's a lot of like one-to-one. You know what I'm saying? I think there's a lot of apples to apples here. But I am curious about what some of the nuances would be, and you know how someone who's been over there, lived over there for a while would view this type of decision, knowing the network more personally, knowing the environment in London, in England more personally. I would be interested in that. Why don't we?
Anybody's watching and they have access to Paul. Shoot him a text. Let him know we want to hear his thoughts on it. Yeah.
So we got a couple cases. Which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, let's start
Louisiana.
Let's start with the brother Fair
Wayne
Bryant. Yeah, Fair Wayne Bryant. So you want to give the rundown on that one?
Fair Wayne Bryant. Florence, welcome. Yeah, so this is a guy. Sorry, my phone. So this is a guy that had several things in his background and had multiple charges. Was hit with one final one, and that was it. So they locked the door, threw away the key, and like that's kind of how the justice system works. And I think that's the question. There's a lot of questions that I have. There's a lot of things to talk about here. One is that the multiple offender things. One is the harshness of the punishment. I think those in some ways are different things, but they're very connected. And I think when you look at the multiple offenses thing, it really, when I look at it, I start to think about what are we actually doing? And part of the points was like, look, we spent like $500,000 locking this guy up so far. Spent, you know, and so we are spending taxpayer money to do what? What is the intended purpose of that? And I think a lot of people, a lot of what I read as far as that, like, we don't rejuvenate people. We don't like give them a new sense of being, a new sense of purpose. We don't like create more opportunities from them. In fact, we actually take them as like before they came in, and a lot of times they're worse off when they come out and they have strikes against them. So it's harder to catch employment. It's harder to do other things. And so we're actually going in the wrong direction. So Stephen Marshall says, I thought the PRISM system was about creating reform. That's what they say they're about. That is 100% what they say they're about. That is not what actually happens. So this guy is now, his case, he got denied. Louisiana, 4 white men on the judges and 1 black female that was against it. I think it was stealing some hedge trimmers. It was the final straw, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, it's the humanity piece, right? It's like you often take us there and remind us that this is a human. This is somebody's son, uncle, brother, father, right? And it's like you're gonna take like my dad away, like for the rest of our lives. Like, dude is like 62 now, right? He's been locked up for 20 years, right? It's like what was he going to do with some hedge trimmers, right? It's like sell them, like trim some bushes. You know what I mean? It's like who are we, right? It's like who are we if we would take somebody's life away for some hedge trimmers? And I get it. Like, dude, had broke the law. He was guilty, right? It made me really think about like myself and how like conditioned we all can be, right? I remember like being at a grocery store in my community, in my neighborhood, and I was a young teenager with one of my cousins and a couple friends, and the grocery is a drugstore on Finkel. There was a dude in there stealing canned goods. The security guard saw him and kind of gave chase. Dude made it out of the store and into the middle of Finkel, crossing Finkel, and the security guard came out shooting at him. I still think to this day that he got the guy because the guy fell and he looked back and he looked really, really scared. Then he got up and continued to run across the street. The security guard came out into Finkel, came out the door shooting on Finkel, right? And it's like he didn't have time to figure out how many cars were coming, if there were kids on the other side of the street or what. You know what I mean? Like, the guy was stealing canned goods. You know what I mean? And I just think that we really, really like value stuff more than we value life. And I think the power, again, I'm obsessed with that term, that those Supreme Court justices, like the judges, displayed when they said they made a decision to keep him locked up for life for something this simple at 62, right? Like serious threat to society. It's rough, right? And I definitely want to go back and do some research and look at like what the sentences look like in Louisiana, like across racial lines, right? Because, you know, I just know that we have a history of turning like things like that and 3 strikes and all that stuff when it comes to like white people sentencing white people, it normally looks drastically different, right? And I haven't had time to go back and dig deep into that, but I plan to spend some time doing that this week. Yeah, so I don't know, man. Like, what do you do with that, right? Like, what do you do? It's like, you know, it's you know, you start to just get exposure to a bunch of other cases, and you see where people were obviously not guilty for. You know, I'm reading a book right now. It's called Breathe. It's a great book. And if you're looking for like something really good to read on your next reading list, just check that out. But one of the stories that I came across was somebody that was not guilty and obviously not guilty and was put on death row, ended up being executed. And it was obvious that everybody knew that the person wasn't guilty, and they still went through with killing dude. And you know, it's just where we live at, and it's sophisticated as we are as a country, if we can't figure out how to take someone that's stealing like trimmers and turn them into just a person that we feel safe being on the streets, if we can't do that, I don't know if that's a indictment on him or on us. You know what I mean? Like, those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, actually, it is. I do think we have to pause. I do definitely think we have to pause, and I think we need to get to the place where we start to look at. So a lot of us don't necessarily think about stuff like this. Let me just speak for me. So I don't think a whole lot about prison for a number of reasons. One, it doesn't necessarily have a ton of impact on me personally. I tend to appreciate laws. You know what I'm saying? Like you break the law, you get the punishment, you get the consequence. And so for that, like, I kind of will just set it like over here. But I've started to pay more of attention to it and started to ask the question, like, what is the purpose? You know what I'm saying? Like, why do we have this distance between what we say the purpose is and what is actually happening? When you start looking at how the prison population has increased like exponentially over the past 20 years or so. Like, it's absolutely nuts. When you look at what people are being charged for, one of the things that blows my mind is like how, when you compare like drugs to violent offenses or specifically rape, and I'm like, dude, like it's nuts to me how people that will do something like rape will have a similar consequences for something like drugs. I think, but also just the rate of return to prison, what we're doing on the outside to rehabilitate people, what we're doing on the inside to rehabilitate people. I just think we're all stuff that doesn't touch us. And this is just in general. If it does not affect me personally, this is with COVID, this is with everything in life. If it does not affect me personally, if it does not touch my family, I don't care about it. I don't need to care about it. I don't need to think about it. I got enough things going on where I don't have the energy to put here to try to fix this, or even dig in to figure out, is there really a problem? Why are we surprised? What's that mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't say surprised. I don't think we're surprised. I think we may be frustrated by Byron, but not surprised. If we're coming off as surprised, like, what you see our trailer, I mean our intro and our outro. This is America, so we're aware of where we are and what typically happens. So it's not surprise, it's just frustrating. So
yeah, so I think in order for us, I think all of us, I think we need to get to a place where we're looking at, like, look, we're looking at everything. We're trying to take a fresh look at everything. Say, who are we supposed to be? Who do we tell ourselves that we are? Who do we tell the world that we are? And how do we get to the place where we actually are that for everybody? And so part of that has got to mean that we start listening. Part of that has got to mean that we start tinkering with stuff and really diving deep into stuff that, like, does not necessarily affect me personally. But because there are other people that are affected by this, there are other people that are saying, hey, there's a problem here, I should stop and listen. You know what I'm saying? It goes back to, like, am I, and that's an ironic question. Am I my brother's keeper? I mean, you know what I'm saying? The irony there is, like, dude, why is your brother missing? It has everything to do with you. And so I think that just gets into, and that was like that was direct, but I think there's even indirect things that we do or that we take for granted that we're not thinking about that do have impact on other people. So my lack of action, my lack of care, my lack of concern to check out the prison system, to look at education more carefully, to just get involved in these things. And try to figure out, as overwhelming as it is, because look, if I look at, like, how do we get DPS, what is it, CD? They added something.
DPS CD. Yep.
Thank you. How do we get DPS CD to be, like, on the level with other school systems? That's overwhelming. You know what I'm saying? And what does any individual actually have a role to play there? Like, what is it? Or is it something supplementary to that? So I think there's a lot of questions about how to create equality that are just overwhelming. And the easiest thing to do is just to be like, let me just go back to like caring about me and mine, and like if something crosses my path, I'll try to do the best. But
yeah. Brian Ferguson Bay said systematic oppression, just examples to keep people in line. And to your question about like DPSCD and what can I do? I know if you are a Black man and you're looking for ways to plug in, Brian Ferguson Bay is a part of an organization of amazing, dynamic brothers that look to influence and have an impact in the education system by getting Black men to volunteer, become teachers, become educators, and they can get you set up in demand. You check them out at I think indemand.com, but you can definitely find them on Facebook and Instagram, In Demand. Byron said, prison is nothing but slavery reincarnated. Definitely, there's some truth to that, some serious truth to that. I mean, if you are not aware of the prison industrial complex and the, 13th Amendment, which, is a way to allow legalized slavery, just check out the movie 13th. There's a sister, Stovall, that is going to be, I think, airing that show sometime this week. And she'll also be holding a discussion on it. So movie 13th, check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It'll help bring you up to speed in regards to having some level of understanding of what Byron Smooth means by that. Brian Ferguson Bay, yeah, thanks for putting that in the comment section. I am indemand.com.
Byron also said America has to admit its wrongs in order to progress and heal. Elizabeth, prison is an economy of its own. It is. What I appreciate about that, you see this in South Africa. So South Africa had this big thing where the whole country gets like called on the carpet and they deal with stuff. And we, on the other hand, have kind of just tried to like walk it off. You know what I'm saying? It's like the term you use in sports, or like when you're a kid, like you fall off, you just walk it off. You twist your ankle in basketball and walk it off. And that's the attempt that we've made, is to just walk it off. But like, when you go through, like, when people have been victims of something, so of an egregious crime, of a violent crime, of a sexual crime, like you can't just walk certain stuff off. And when you are a child of someone who's been through that, and they pass on, like, here's what to avoid, here's what to look for, here's like, you can't this, and this, and you need to this. When you get to a place where like that becomes your norm, like you just can't walk certain stuff off. And when you're on the other side, like you can't just walk certain stuff off and pretend it didn't happen. I think like that's part of the problem, is that we've as the majority of America has said like, yeah, that was in the past, we're good now, like everybody's got the same opportunity. It's like, you walk it off. Like, to me, that's the equivalent of walk it off. Like, that was back in the past, walk it off. And like, we actually think we need to get to someplace like what South Africa did, where we have a time where people actually sit and listen to this stuff. This is what happened. This is what happened. This is how it impacted me personally. And start to try to appreciate to get back to a place where we look at each other in the face, and not just as like somebody behind a computer, somebody that's an opponent, somebody that's trying to one up me, or vice versa, but just like we get to a level of like hearing and listening, compassion, like, and empathy as much as possible, and then figure out like, now what do we do about it? But what we're doing right now, just like taking shots back and forth, that's not going to get us anywhere. Won't get us anywhere. And, just a bunch of sound bites, some on Fox, some on CNN, some, it's all this back and forth, this little chess game, this sophisticated Democrat Republican. I don't think either one of us have either one of them have our best interests at heart. I don't think either one of them have been effective at really trying to like bring us together as a people. So yeah, man, we got to get to a different place. But it actually starts with us. It starts with me. Like, I have to be at a place where I'm gonna listen and shut up sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And try to understand more sometimes. And instead of like trying to like, oh, you slipped up right there, so I'm gonna sneak one in. Ask a question instead. You know what I'm saying? Like a real question, not like a leading question, because I'm trying to like get you more and more into this corner before I start going. But like, no, actual question about you.
Yeah, I think that I got many thoughts on that. I love the walk it off analogy. Josh Spear says, what do you think of restorative practice as an alternative for a lot of cases? I think that question was towards you on based on some of the comments that you were having. So I'll let you take it.
Oh man, I actually really love the restorative practice method, and the whole thought process. So restorative practice, it's interesting because restorative practice, even as a way like that we think about the judicial system, is like completely removing you kind of separate the victim and the aggressor, the perpetrator, and you have this other third party that has no connection to what's actually going on, deciding this is what we're going to do. But the restorative practice is actually kind of similar to what they did in South Africa, in the fact that, like, in some ways, like, you sit and listen. It's like, okay, so here's what happened. So you have the victim saying place. It's a beautiful process, actually. And they're using it in schools. They're using it in different places around the country, and I think internationally, where they're saying the victim gets to come in, and there are other people there who are part of a supporting cast, and a lot of times it's the whole, like, they'll be part of a portion of a community. So if it's in a school room, if it's in a classroom, like the kids can actually run it themselves. So you have the person who's been offended, and they sit down and say, like, look, here's what happened, like, here's how I felt, like, here's my thoughts behind it. The aggressor, the perpetrator, gets to say, like, here's what I did, here's what I was thinking at the time. They get to, like, one of the questions is, how do you think people around, like, who was affected by this and how? So it's not even just about, like, this person that you may have done something to, but, like, how were other people affected by it? And it's a beautiful process. And then the parties actually come up with something that they think is an appropriate consequence. And so there's buy-in. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's buy-in, there's a community part of it, there's it tends to, like, create some elements of compassion. It's a beautiful, beautiful process. It's actually something that I would like to learn more of, because I do think that the way we do things, and they compare themselves to how we operate now in the justice system, and just the dysfunction there. And this is a lot more compelling to me, and just a lot more humane overall.
So as I think about that question, like, if I'm following Josh's question right in regards to what you were saying, I think he's talking about, like, us as Americans, especially when it comes to, like, Black and maybe Natives, and America having this restorative justice practice with America and to move forward. I'm not opposed to it. I think the difference is, when you see that done, you have the perpetrator who's been punished, right? And then you have the victim, and they're having a conversation, right? America was rewarded for her crimes against Black folk and against the natives. So there's been no punishment. There's been a reward, if you will, right? So I don't know how effective those, because I've watched some of them, and I've seen the people crying, and I've seen people forgive folk, you know what I mean? And I saw, like, the same thing y'all probably saw, and some of that weight being lifted off of people, right? I don't know how those would have happened, how those would have worked had the victim sat across from the perpetrator that was given a reward, or, like, some type of compensation for committing a crime against that victim, right? That's why this is a little bit different, in my opinion, and it's a little trickier than just like some of that stuff that we've seen. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it or it doesn't work. Like, I'm like, okay, like there would definitely have to be some serious tweaking, you know, or let's start with reparations and then let's go to the restorative practices. You know
well, that
I mean?
might be something that comes out of it though. Like a true restorative practice, like they decide in that moment what needs to happen. You know what I'm saying? It's not like something that's already happened. Like you've been dealt with for this, like this just happened. Let's talk about it. And so, yeah, I think that would be something that would need to be taken into account and come up in that conversation. It's like, look, so here's all the benefits based upon this. So given that, given the, like what actually happened, given the benefits of that, like now what is the proper course of action? And I think that's where it would get really interesting.
Yeah. Because
nobody wants to give up what they've worked so very hard for.
Yeah, yeah. Especially me, right? Like, I don't want to pay reparations. I've never owned any slaves.
Yeah.
Right? I paid taxes. So if somebody came up with, if somebody had to come up off some reparations and it came from our tax dollars, guess what? Black folk be paying those reparations. But anyway, I digress.
We went a couple layers deeper than he intended.
Yeah. He said he was thinking more in response to mass incarceration, not America's crimes. Okay. Sorry, Josh. See, that's my flawed lens in the way, the context in which I hear any questions. Yeah, I'm always thinking like that. But no, I agree. There's another person that we needed to get to that was sentenced in Louisiana, and he had a different outcome. So Derek Harris is a military vet. He was sentenced to life in prison for selling less than $30 worth of marijuana. And he was released, time served. And I think, I want to say, was it 12 years? I don't have that number in front of me, but he did some serious time and was sentenced to life.
At least 9. It was 9, 12, something like that. But yeah, it's like a heck of a lot of days.
Yeah, for $30 worth of weed. And I think he had some other minor offenses and convictions on his record as well. But I don't know, like what are they doing in Louisiana? Where they're giving these like crazy sentences, and it's not just the Louisiana thing, right? Like you see that like all over the place, right? Like we used to have some like mandatory life sentences for a certain amount of crack here in Michigan. Like you can get popped one time and you're going away forever, right? There was a big difference between the amount of crack you had to get caught with versus the amount of powder cocaine, right? And like, again, we always go back to who's most likely to get caught with crack, who's most likely to get caught with some powder cocaine. When they, so taking that into consideration when they make these laws. And I mean, if you are in Louisiana and you're comfortable with having judges that are sending out these type of sentences for these type of offenses, like it's more than just a judge that's at fault here, in my opinion, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see him released. I'm glad to see that Derek Harris has made it home. But there's a lot of work to do. There's probably a lot of Derek Harris's that are sitting there that went in front of those same judges with similar offenses that might spend the rest of their lives in jail.
Yeah, and I think this is where we need to get to the visualization process of like, what if this is my uncle, this is my father, this is my whatever, and yeah, I recognize like there was it gets down to the law to me, and it's like fixing the law. What is the problem with the law, and getting down to fixing what's actually broken? Because we could try to get at this one person, which I think is appropriate. Like I think there should be petitions. I think there should be things that are set up, and I would guess, especially now in today's climate, that that's already beginning to happen. But I think if we don't start like looking back, it's like with the Ahmaud Arbery case, for instance, it's like we're going to like try to get to the source of this particular case. But we need to get to like the source. Why do they even think that it's okay for them to like carry around guns and do a citizen's arrest? Like that law was put in place the same year as the emancipation of slaves. So like you got to look at those connections. Like why do we have laws set up the way they are? What do we need to reassess? How do we get at the roots of this to actually like create a different system? Like I don't like the legal system. I don't. Like I just like, as you know, I get a traffic ticket and they hit me for one thing that they shouldn't have hit me of, and they'll give me this instead, and it's a little lower. And even though like I'm not even guilty of the one thing, I'm gonna take this because I don't feel like going through the whole shebang in their system, because ultimately they hold so much power, so much authority. I don't trust the system. And so I'll just do this little thing right here that they let me off for, and they get their little $200, which is all they wanted in the first place. And you know what I'm saying? And now I walk away. But you know, this is on my driving right. So that's very, very minor. But I think when you start to look at that, like say, so now you're coming in, you're 16 years old, you're 26 years old, whatever, and I got this deal for you, and if you don't take this deal, you could get up to 10 years. I'm going to take this deal. So now I got a felony. I'm going to do a year and a half, but at least it's not 10. But now I can't get it. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like really looking at this stuff, you know, all the like the domino effect of this and saying like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And having to step back, because it doesn't necessarily, if it doesn't affect me personally, having to really step back and really take some time meditating on like, man, what if I did though? What if I was going away from my kids for 10 years? What if it was like one of my kids going away from me, a parent, a brother, a sister? Like, so what do I do? What are even if I don't have time to do that, what are the organizations that are doing some work that are going to, you know, I can at least throw some money to?
Yeah. It's heavy. It's heavy, and these are real lives, and these are real people with real families. Simone said earlier that most people don't have the interest or the know-how to engage in real conversation. So that's why we're doing this. Hopefully, we're able to give you some examples on how to have it. I mean, I think it starts with kind of being honest and finding some folks that can deal with the things that you say when you're going to be honest and not crucify you for them, right? Stephen Marshall said that's a good example. You plead guilty to something that you did not deal with the trouble or hassle of fighting the system. The system is severely flawed. Agreed, Stephen. Yeah, it's rough. We're not going to fix it today in one conversation, but we hope that in some way, somehow, we all are inspired to figure out what we can do. What's our part to play? Is it voting? Is it making calls? Is it, you know, like Steve said, like
voting? Where's the banner?
Donating money to some.
Ralph, where's the banner? You mentioned voting.
Yeah. Ralph said Yeezy 2020. You know what I mean? Like, don't forget, you know, Yeezy 2020. Or you can write Ralph in. You know what I mean? Like, you can write Ralph in for president. That's what I'm gonna do. So I'm voting. Ralph's got my vote this year. But Yeezy 2020. Yeah, no, but what's my role? What part do I have to play? Right? Like, is my role just getting with you on a Sunday night to have an hour-long conversation with some of these people that we know, some of the people we like? I really enjoy having a conversation. I really enjoy Josh's perspective, Bryant's, Stevens. Like I really appreciate y'all perspective, Elizabeth, Byron. So we really appreciate y'all and enjoy having this conversation. But I just think that there's a lot more that we all should be doing. And I think some of us really are. And some of us need to figure out what that looks like for us on a personal level, because a broken system's not going to fix itself, right? Byron already told us that, you know, the prison system is slavery like 2.0, right? So it's like the system's already figured out how to regenerate itself and repair itself, even when we are able to move the needle in some ways. So we have to stay aggressive. We have to continue to play our part. Steve, you want to give us some final thoughts because it's about that time.
No, I think it's that. I think it's figuring out our part and also just on a personal level, like working to. So much stuff comes across. Like we're inundated with so much information. It's absolutely ridiculous. We download more information now in a short span of time than we did in whole lifetimes back, 100 years ago. It's nuts the amount of information, and a lot of times we're making snap judgments. And I think a lot with that also is just slowing down and remembering, like, to view people as human, to treat people with love and respect and compassion, and really try to connect with people's hearts. And I think the more we can start to do that, I think the more that we start filtering ourselves, and the more that I start checking myself and understanding when I'm starting to get hardened, when I'm starting to just make snap judgments and just dismiss people because they are in a certain category, and I'm kind of, shelving them in my mind a certain way that's unhelpful, I think the better off all of us will be. So it starts with me. It starts with the person in the mirror. Woo!
That's it. No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. So with that being said, y'all, that's all we got for y'all this week. Look forward to connecting with y'all again next week. And Ralph, you take us up out of here. Let us know.
This is America.
I have a dream.
These are animals.
America preaches integration and practices segregation.
Why did you say Mexico?
A rising tide of discontent.
The South will rise again. I have a dream.
We have contrasting visions about what America is.
This is America.